All right, so I'm making these splits, and I know somebody's going to ask, you know, what am I looking for? How am I making them? Well, this right here is a prime example of what I'm looking for as far as what frames I pick. I want some brood because that helps hold the bees, okay? But if you look at this frame, look at all of this pollen. Now, I just talked about hives, that one hive being pollen and honey bound. Man, these queens, I tell you, probably ought to just kill them all. Well, you just saw one of the frames. I mean, that was a queen from last year, and she was in this box and just got a good pattern. I busted this one up. They didn't really produce a whole lot of honey, but I think one of the problems with this one was just going through the hive body. You know, they were really pollen and honey bound down there in the hive body. I made some splits off of it about 2 weeks ago, dropped a frame in, and that frame, one of the frames that I dropped in was the one that you saw the pattern on. So, you know, you give the queen a good frame that's not full of pollen and honey, give her one that she can actually fill up with eggs, and she can do it, you know. Look at all of that pollen. I would say probably 60 to 70% of that frame is pollen. Now, people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them that I pull pollen and honey out of the brood nest. But here's the thing. I don't mind pollen and honey in the brood nest in the fall. I mean, I actually encourage it. But in the spring and the summer, there is absolutely no reason to have a frame that is 60 to 70% pollen in the middle of your brood nest. That's why this hive is probably struggled. That's probably why it didn't make any honey. For me, I use 8-frame equipment. Frames 1 and 8. I will accept some honey and some pollen in frames 1 and 8. Obviously, honey and pollen on the outskirts of the brood on the brood frames is fine too. That's excessive. It's too much. You know, when you have 60 to 70% of the frame in pollen, well, that's 60 to 70% of the frame that's not able to have an egg put in it for the queen. It should be the opposite. You should have like 20 or 30% of the frame honey or pollen, maybe less, maybe like 10% during the spring and the summer. The vast majority of this box should be open and able for the queen to lay eggs in, or your hive is going to struggle. So when I'm making my splits, especially early in the spring, this is what I look for. I look for frames with a little bit of brood, but a whole lot of honey and pollen. It gives the split plenty of food to eat. And then when I drop an empty frame into this hive here, they will draw that frame down, or if it's a piece of comb, they will clean it up, and the queen can immediately start to lay. And you'll see a huge boost in the population of this hive in about 2 or 3 weeks, or probably 3 to 4 weeks, whenever this brood that they lay in this new frame starts to hatch out. So that's what I'm looking for. This, and then just those old crappy frames. Maybe a frame that has a hole in it, maybe a frame that's got a little bit too much drone. You can see some drone on this one where they've built drones in the past. You know, anything like that, suboptimal frames, that's what I'm looking for. I want to have some brood, I want to have some food, but I'm looking for those frames that are just not ideal for the brood nest. I'm going to pull those out. I'm going to put them in these boxes here. Then I'm going to drop a queen cell in it. They make perfect frames for splits. So, because, I mean, in all honesty, a lot of this time in the spring, I go through my production colonies, even during the honey flow, and I pull these frames out like this, and I let them go ahead, and I let that queen start to fill those frames up with eggs. And if I do that early enough, it doesn't hurt my colony. A production colony losing 1 frame of bees, and now this is my opinion, it's not going to hurt it. If I can pull a frame of bees like this out and drop an empty frame in that they can actually utilize, then over time I'm going to see more good than I am bad, and it doesn't really hurt my honey flow. So I'm estimating, you know, this year I haven't got the total numbers yet, but I pulled 19 supers off of 13 production hives that I had going, and I'll probably have about 400 pounds of honey. So, you know, that's good for this area where I'm at. So, or it's good enough for me. You know, I'm not looking to make 60 or 70 pounds of honey per hive. So, and you know, you got 10 or 15 hives and you're making 40-50 pounds a hive, you know, that's 600 or 700 pounds in the spring. It'll be a push for me to sell that 600 or 700 pounds worth of honey before I get my sourwood honey coming in. So, but just another little video of what I've been doing today. This was an ideal example of what I'm looking for whenever I'm making these splits. I'm trying to pull out these frames, free these queens up and get them going. I want more frames like that one you saw earlier.